All right, good evening, everybody. I wanted to welcome everyone to the Resumes for Nurses workshop. We're thrilled to have with us a couple of guest presenters from Boston Children's Hospital, who I will introduce in just a moment. Before I do that, I wanted to invite all of our students as you hear comments and things that you have questions about, or if you've brought your own questions, at any time, feel free to enter those in the Q&A, and we will get to them before the end of the session. So I will turn it over to Amanda and Richard, and I'll invite you to introduce yourselves and then go into your presentation. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Rachel. My name is Richard Parker. I'm the lead and senior talent acquisition ambassador for nursing. With that title, I should have diplomatic immunity, but basically I'm the lead nurse recruiter. Welcome to the resume workshop for nurses. And this is my colleague, Amanda Beat. I'll let her introduce herself.
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Amanda Beat. I am the Talent Acquisition Ambassador in Nursing, and a little bit about my role. I handle the new graduate RN program at Boston Children's Hospital, and I also primarily recruit for nursing students looking for per diem clinical assistant work.
And we are part of a team of 6, actually, nurse recruiters at Boston Children's that do a variety of nursing positions, nursing assistants, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, milieu counselors, care companions, all kinds of direct patient care areas. So we are happy to answer any questions for you at the end of our presentation, so feel free to add those to the Q&A as we go through this, and we'll try to get to them all at the end. A little more background: I've been at Children's now 13 years and been in nurse recruitment for, I guess, 7 years. And Amanda, how long have you been there now?
6 years.
Wow. Wow. Great.
Time flies.
Right. So we will start our presentation.
Okay.
So this is just a goals and objectives for discussion slide. We want to go over what does a strong nursing resume look like. We'll have an example of that. What are nurse recruiters looking for when we review resumes, and how to make your resume stand out in the vast sea of new grads and applicants.
So here we have do's and don'ts for nursing resumes, and Richard and I can kind of go back and forth on these, but I'll start with just going down the list. So do's, do use reverse chronological format for your work resume. List jobs starting with the most recent. If experience is limited, focus on skills, special activities, volunteering, and association with professional organizations. Do use good quality paper without designs or borders. Right now, being a mostly virtual platform, I realize a lot of people won't be going in person for interviews. Well, you might, but obviously, a good PDF resume is awesome, but going into an in-person interview, a good paper quality is important. And use 1-inch margins, 12-point type, and an uncluttered look. Use bullet points. Have all dates on the right-hand side. Do include all clinical rotations. As nursing students, a lot of times you may not have a lot of work experience relative to your field. And so this really shows us, what experience you have had in nursing school. It's important to list where it was held, so the organization, what type of unit you were on, and not saying, what was an example, Richard?
Lesson 10, which I think is like a Mass General floor or something. We have no idea what that floor does.
Correct. So if it's an inpatient cardiac unit or a NICU, be just a little more specific. And then the total number of hours, that also gives us a good sense of how long you worked on the unit. And if COVID did impact that, it also might be good to just make a note on your resume that, you did half of your hours in person, half of it was virtual. And that's okay. It's just good for us to know for when we recruit. I'll let Richard take on the rest.
Sure. So do check spelling. We say proofread, proofread, and proofread again. We did a little fake resume, which you'll see shortly, and I kept finding little errors that we were correcting up until the last minute. Hiring managers can be very particular, and if you have 6 errors on your resume, they will think you're not attentive to detail. They will think you don't care about the position, etc. So you don't want to give them reason to rule you out before they even meet you or finish your resume. We say do have a LinkedIn profile. Some managers will look at that. It's good to have a presence for that. Always helpful to build that as you go along into your career. We say don't include a photo or list things like health, hobbies, marital status, date of birth, family information. I had one last week with the date of birth on there, and I was like, why is that on there? It just seemed odd to me. And then GPA, we say it's okay to list it high. If you've got a 3.97 GPA or 4.0, go ahead, put that on there for sure. But if your GPA might have been like mine and not that amazing, I wouldn't advertise it. But it doesn't mean you're not a good candidate. And then finally, don't list references or say references available upon request. That's an understood statement. Save the line. You'll need it for other things on your resume. And if you do have a list of references to provide at some point, make sure at the top of that list is your name and contact information. I get so many handed to me lists of references, and then the next week I'm like, whose list of references is this? I see a list of names and I don't know whose it is. So just a little tip for that.
Perfect. Okay, so we have some tips for nursing cover letters. A lot of times students will ask or applicants will ask, you know, should I have a cover letter? So yes, it is very important more to the managers, because the managers want to know why you want to work at Boston Children's Hospital and on that unit specifically. And it gives you a chance to allow them to get to know you even before they meet you, is through your cover letter and your resume. So keep your nursing cover letter brief and to the point, you know, not too long. We don't want it to take too long to read it. Avoid to whom it may concern. Know the name of the hiring manager or address to the hospital if you don't know the exact name of the hiring manager. Also, utilize your recruiter to ask those types of questions. We're always here and happy to help. Tailor your letter to the employer. Mention their mission statement and how your goals match that. Explain why you want to work in that particular area and list any unique skills pertinent to the position. Thank the reader for his or her time and include your phone number and email. I'll let Richard take the last one.
Sure. Check your voicemail and email. If you are in the job search, have a voice mailbox set up and check it regularly. I can't tell you how many people have cell phones. Everyone has a cell phone, but don't have their voice mailbox set up. So when I call it, it said, this user does not have a voice mailbox set up in their system. And I can't leave them a message, and then I'm emailing them, and some of them aren't checking their email. So you want to be accessible and responsive, which is the last line. Be responsive and professional in all correspondence. And basically just proofread your emails as well. Make sure they're professional. I get several that say, hey, Richard, or hey, Rich, and I don't go by Rich. Things like that. It's like, don't call me hey. Things like that. So just keep that professional and be responsive to any inquiries or emails.
Especially when you're applying for a job and you're interested. Once you click apply, you should be aware, you know, be checking email, be checking your phone, and just be on the lookout. And that's always really, really important. So next we have an example of a resume. So this is not the whole resume. It's hard to fit one resume on a PowerPoint slide. So this is just the first half of the resume, and then we'll show the second half. But this resume does fit on one page in a Word doc, just so you are aware.
And obviously it's a fake resume.
And it is a fake resume, yes. So I'll get us started, and then Richard, you can maybe take the second page. So something, you know, just looking at the top here. So we have Jane Nurse. she has listed that she is an RN and received her BSN. Always put your address, your phone number, and your email address. Education right at the top, Boston College, graduation date. If you are still in school, which a lot of you may be, even putting just anticipated graduation date is also great, just so we have an idea of when you're graduating. And list your major. Definitely list minors if applicable. Honors, so you can list awards, scholarships, any kind of notable mentions that you want to list that you would think is very relative to the job that you're applying to. And then relative coursework, the same thing. So listing any classes that you feel or coursework that you feel is very relative to the job that you're applying to that you would like to share with us on your resume before we even speak with you. And so a big thing for me as a recruiter for new grads and nursing students is clinical experience. So like I said before, when you're in school, you may not have a lot of work experience. So looking at your clinical experiences, a lot of times the majority of experience that you've received over the 3, 4, or if you're in an accelerated program, 2 years that you're in school. So doing it in order, usually, you know, your practicum is right up at the top, but the biggest thing to just note here is listing where you had your clinical. The city is listed, that's nice. And what type of clinical it was. So you can see we listed nursing practicum, pediatric clinical, adults in health and illness, number 3 clinical, where you did it. So we listed here intermediate care program, that is 9 South, but we listed what the floor was, and then the total number of hours. And then to the right, list the dates that you were there. This gives us a really just good overview of, okay, so Jane, nurse, she had 170 hours on this floor, 90 hours on this floor. And when we're talking to managers, we can say, you know, we really need to take into consideration the amount of time that this applicant has spent on this floor specifically. And working in a pediatric setting, because things are so specialized, being able to see where you were able to work really helps us when talking to the managers as well. Any thoughts, Richard?
No, all of that sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So then this would be the second half of the resume.
I'll take this from here. For professional experience, that would be any work experience you have that you feel would be relevant to working in a hospital. So this person has been a clinical assistant at our hospital in a cardiac ICU and was a patient care tech in an adult med-surg unit as well previously, which probably doesn't line up. This is fake. They couldn't be in both DC and Boston. Actually, I think she was working per diem, lived in the area, went to school down there or something. So could be.
Correct. So it is possible.
So it is possible.
It is.
Anything else that you think might be relevant? Like if you were a waiter or a waitress, might not be relevant. But if you were a nanny for 5 years, I asked a candidate once, did they have any pediatric experience? And she said, no, I don't have any, but I was a nanny for 5 years. And I'm like, well, you've worked with, and she had like 3 kids that she was a nanny for. So very helpful if it's relevant to your applying at Children's, for example, or whatever you've done. Maybe you cared for an elderly relative in your home who was terminally ill or something like that. If it's patient care, I would list it. And then extracurricular activities or volunteer work. Sometimes that can really tip the scales when they're looking at several new grads or several candidates with similar experience. It shows diversity in what you've done and a well-rounded candidate. And then lastly, we list skills, licensure, certifications. That's more of a catch-all category where you can put whether you have PALS or BLS or maybe you're an EMT or a lifeguard or speak Spanish or certified in, you know, random things that might be very helpful for this position working in a hospital. So I would list that. I'm trying to think what else you would list there. I think that's basically it. If you don't, if you're, you know, haven't sat for the boards, don't have your license, obviously, don't list it there, but you could, you know, anticipated licensure fall 2020, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to professional experience, I like what you said, definitely adding nanny experience if it was a paid position, or I've even seen camp counselors. That's something that we like to see for per diem clinical assistant work, because it shows you've worked at a camp and sometimes you had some responsibilities that were clinical. You can get a little creative if it was in a clinical setting, just because you are early on in your career. And so you do have to list some of the experiences you have had, even if it's not in a hospital yet. And so that brings us to the end of our PowerPoint. And so we open it up for questions, discussion. I do see, I think there's a couple